Hello, Changemakers. Tom McGrath here. Before we get into today's superb episode, I'd like to take a moment to invite you all to Experience Everywhere, the first, biggest, and best virtual conference dedicated to improving digital employee experience in the work from anywhere world. This year's event features Adam Grant, Forrester, Gartner, and a ridiculous number of the world's leading digital workplaces, from Blackstone to Siemens to Toyota to Johnson & Johnson. The list goes on and on and on. It's free to attend. And last but not least, Tim and myself have the honor of hosting this year's event. There's one for the Americas on November the 16th and EMEA November 17th. So wherever you are, check the show notes for more info, or tap in nextthink.com/experience-2021/. And we look forward to seeing you there. Okay, on with the show.
Welcome, IT Changemakers, to the Dex Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGrath. Let's get into it.
Hello, Changemakers. Welcome to the Dex Show. I'm Tom McGrath, joined as ever by Tim Flower. Tim, how are you?
Tom, I'm doing really well up in Boston with the team. Still traveling on the road, and but I'm real excited today to talk with Rod.
I guess you would be, not least because he's a former comrade of yours from back in the day. I don't mean in the communist sense. I wouldn't like to pry what the political background might be, but in the general sense, you know.
Yeah, back in the early days of distributed computing, when the word influencer was kind of just coming around, technology influencer. Great community organizer, and really got me focused on that area of expertise.
Love it. Well, let's introduce Rod to the audience. Rod Trent is a cybersecurity consultant at Microsoft, as well as a content creator, and indeed, as you've mentioned, Tim, a cornerstone of cross-industry community and collaboration. Something we're going to have the pleasure of talking to him about today. Rod, welcome to the Dex Show. Lovely to have you.
Thank you so much. Tim said he was excited. I hope I kind of live up to that with this discussion. I feel a little bit of pressure now, but that's okay.
That's okay.
It's all good, Rod.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
We're it's all good. There's no bar here.
But the bar is low, Rod, is what Tim's trying to say.
The bar is low.
Okay, so that sounds very good. I feel more comfortable now. I appreciate that, even if it's not true.
Excellent. And what do you remember of Tim from back in the day, Rod? Tell us about your early affinity there.
Oh my goodness. So I don't know what you want to call it, industry, you want to call it this community, this area or whatever, that I've been absolutely blessed to be part of for, I would kind of avoid telling you how many years that is, because then that'll kind of give away my age. But at the same time, man, I've been in this community doing things in this type of community, I guess, for 30 years or more, potentially. Tim, is that about right?
Unfortunately, Rod, yeah, it's about right.
Yeah, so I think I remember Tim from way back when, probably first. We started a series of conferences long time ago. I think it started out as a Computing Edge conference, if anybody ever remembers that company that eventually was acquired by Altiris. Now, Altiris doesn't even exist anymore either. So these are things I'm talking about. You probably can't even search the internet and figure these things out on your own. Computing Edge, and then a website called Swank, SWYNK.com. Kind of had to explain that property at the time because people heard swank when you talked about it, and it sounded like it was some kind of CD website or something, but it was a technical website. But we started a conference, went on to a couple other conferences, which actually eventually became the Microsoft Management Summit, which was a Microsoft-owned management conference that ran for a long time, several years. And I was always involved with that. But I remember from those conferences and from that community that was derived out of that, I think, that's where I met Tim, and man, those were some good times. Those were some really good memories, really good times.
I got the same kind of memories, Rod. It was early career, right? I had already done 8 years at Digital Equipment, so I had kind of cut my teeth in customer service and being out in the field, and then going to Hartford. It was right in that that burgeoning era of moving from green screens to distributed computing, right? And all of the managing DOS and Win31 and Windows 95, and then Active Directory came along, and Microsoft released SMS to try and manage that environment. There's so many things that were really. It was sounds kind of funny. Great time to be alive, right? It was when things were really starting to kick off.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it was really cool stuff.
Well, and you may have to, you said SMS, and you know that I know what that is, but for those that don't, SMS was Systems Management Server. It was the early days of Microsoft's management suite of tools, which, manage endpoints and things like that. Today it's called Endpoint Manager / Intune. Used to be called SCCM, which is System Center Configuration Manager, but in the early days, it was SMS. The acronym also stood for what people kind of jokingly referred to as slow-moving software, because, like I said, it was early days, and it's almost, to me, even at the time, was someone at Microsoft as a side gig put this together on the weekend and just threw it out for people to use, because it was atrocious to begin with. It was horrible, but I'm one of those people, and Tim, I'm sure you're the same, where you saw some value in it, particularly working as we did in the 1990s for organizations where it was still, people kind of forget about this, but the economy, people weren't hiring a lot of folks to manage these endpoints and devices, and SMS was an amazing piece of technology, or at least had the potential, even though it really kind of sucked. But I deployed that within the company that I worked for. I worked for one of the big, I think there's big 5 accounting firms at the time. I think they're down to like 2 or 3 at this point. But I deployed that throughout the entire organization. Oh my goodness. And that saved us, it really saved our butts.
Yeah, we started with 1.1, which really never worked. 1.2 was the one that really had promise, and it had promise because we saw this ability to not have to run around with boxes of floppy disks to install Office, right? There were 2 full boxes of floppy disks just to install Microsoft Office. And the promise of being able to do electronic software delivery was huge. It's interesting, and I'm sure you remember Dwayne Kinghorn. He was on that original SMS team. He went over and founded Computing Edge to help try and make it better. And that's where we got involved with that company and him and his vision, and then adopted Altiris to fill some of the gaps. It's the cool thing about distributed computing all these years has been it's an ecosystem. No single vendor can solve it all. And Microsoft built this platform for everybody to plug in really cool things to help make it better. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, and in respect to that, that's literally where this community was born out of, was a semi-decent product, but there was those gaps. So as you said, people like Computing Edge and Altiris, they helped solve those gaps in the product. But at the same time, there needed to be a community around that where you could have peer support. Otherwise, I don't think this product would even be where it is today, or even exist, if it weren't for that community.
No, if you're in IT, if you're a technologist, you're sitting at your desk, you're working with a couple of peers, and you're evaluating, you're installing this new thing, you can tend to feel like you're on an island. We're going through all this new stuff, not really realizing that there are tens of thousands of other people doing the exact same work. And that's kind of the benefit of that community. So, you're through these years, you're a CEO, an owner, a community manager, a content creator, an editor, a social media specialist. But I thought it was interesting in reading some of your bio and stuff that you've done. You describe yourself as a social events inventor. So which, and that's a cool way to look at it, but which invention, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it the online forum and get the community going, or was it the conferences, and how did you get it all started?
Well, to tell you the truth, thinking about it now, depends on how you look at it, whether it was the egg or the chicken. that website, swank.com, right? I think the community was born before the conferences were, and that's, well, thinking about it, that's absolutely true. There needed to be a spot for additional technical expertise around this product that people kind of sort of got, and they saw the potential and the value. It's interesting. My career literally started through swank.com, or at least this career that I'm in now. Originally, I was a help desk IT person at the time, and it's funny because there was no such thing as an IT person. Back when I started, we were, at least within the company that I was in, we were glorified secretaries. We were actually part of the secretary pool, and I remember getting secretary gifts on Secretary's Day every year, right? Like cookie balloons or those, whatever they are, awesome. And those cookie bouquet and stuff like that. So I was like, oh my goodness, it's a little bit embarrassing. But I saw the value of this. I thought, I'm really digging into this. I really enjoy it. Started get into the depths of the technology itself. And I thought I'd share it somewhere. I was invited by Stephen Wynkoop, which is who the Swank was actually named after. He invited me to come and start writing content, and I did it for $35 a month and a free book. And that's how my how my career started. Cool. And then along the way, out of the blue, I had someone from McGraw-Hill introduce themselves and ask me to write a book on SMS. And I said, no, I want to write it on SMS Installer, if you remember that, which was a wise product.
It was
right?
one of the best tools to come along. We saw that and we said, oh my God, this changes everything.
Yeah, it was a simple graphical scripting tool. It was it originally meant for deployments, creating your deployments for MSIs and things like that. But we used it for literally everything. It was a graphical scripting tool that we could use for everything. Microsoft licensed it from Wise at the time. But through that Swank, Steve Wynkoop was the one that kind of really said, we need to do a conference. This community is really seriously growing. We need to put a conference together. He did that with Dwayne Kinghorn and Computing Edge. I don't know if you remember some of those early days. We had 1E folks there. Remember 1E? 1E is still a big partner, a big community partner these days. So it's a great company. But yeah, I mean, that goes back. So yeah, definitely started out. And another thing about that is communities on the web did not exist at the time, right? So this was kind of brand new itself, a little bit pioneering. We had just come from the old BBS days. Remember those bulletin board systems where everybody had their modems, had to dial in and participate? This was just the start of the World Wide Web. And almost every site on the web at that point looked like it was designed with Microsoft Front Page. It was horrible. And it took a lot of effort. You needed to know HTML. You needed to know how to code back then to even, put together your own website. It wasn't as simple and nice as it is these days with WordPress and all these other mechanisms, but it was a lot of effort. But yeah, everything was brand new back then. So really just, I think back, it wasn't anything that I did. It wasn't anything the community did. It was fresh and new, and people wanted it. And so just getting on board with community on the web was absolutely just the right timing.
Yeah, and I didn't take the authorship to the extent that you did, but some of those early days, you pushed a request to me to write some things on and get some content on that community web, right? And that was one of the eye openers for me, and I know for others. When you write something that you have struggled with and that you have solved, and then you get all the feedback from everybody else that's been trying to solve that same problem, and they're so thankful that you've helped, right? We've been struggling with this. Thank God this shortcuts so many things for me, and that only helps grow the community and get more content and really get things rocking and rolling. So I agree with you. I don't think this environment that we're working in today would have been the same without that early collaboration.
It wouldn't have. And I think, people ask me this all the time, could you start a similar community today? And I have to absolutely, okay. So initially I would have said no. Because when you look at communities these days, the online world, how negative it can be. Jump out to Reddit. Everybody types in caps, it seems like. Everybody's angry at each other, right? It is more difficult to create a community around that type of thing. I look back and I think, at least when we started, it seemed like people were kinder. They appreciated whatever content it was. You post something somewhere today and someone will always say, well, you could have done it this way. Or, it's more of an ego thing, I guess. But I would have said no. But in my current role, as a cloud advocate for security at Microsoft, and the things that I've been doing around this Azure Sentinel product for the past 2.5 years, I have really seen this community using kind of the same recipe that we started with, the kindness, the approach to sharing, right? And just giving back. This community around Azure Sentinel has literally taken off, and this is it's what's energized me and excited me for the past 2.5 years with this product, is that I have seen these people, they're hungry for that type of community because they go to the Reddits and they go to the Facebooks and the Twitters and they get yelled at for trying to be kind and nice. If you can create kind of this gated little area where people can participate and feel comfortable and safe, people are hungry for that. Azure Sentinel, this community is literally grown by leaps and bounds just because of, again, applying that same kind of mentality, that same approach, and that same recipe that we did before. So it still exists. People still want that.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing on our end. We're in this new space. Forrester and Gartner are just starting to create their wave and their magic quadrant for digital employee experience management. Nextsync's been at it for 15 plus years. And the community that comes together to figure out what this space means, what the visibility brings to people. When I talk to folks who have never looked at IT from the employee standpoint, and you understand that turning the lights on, you understand now the implications of a software deployment. What's it going to do to those machines? What did it do? What do I need to change? What decisions do I need to make? Because I can see the employee's experience of changes that are being made, and the community that's coming together, I think, is really cool to figure out how to work that in as a discipline. So if you were kind of fast forward the thinking that you had back then, if you were to give a community organizer some advice on how to get it started, and as well as the participants who join that collaborative group, what kind of advice would you give to make those communities as robust as possible?
Well, I think a lot of times, particularly these days, a lot of people are kind of heavy-handed as far as moderation goes. Everybody needs to have a voice, and it doesn't matter. I've participated, not been part of, because I kind of left because it disgusted me, but I've participated in communities before where it is heavy-handed. Somebody will say, and somebody will ask a question that's been asked before, right? It's probably a newbie question. And that's the response. Oh, that's a newbie question. Go look at our docs, or go look at this thread, or do this. Everybody is in a different spot in whatever situation that they're in. They may be a newbie, but as soon as you offend that newbie, they're not going to come back, right? And your community is going to be stagnant and it's not going to grow. You want that to grow, and you do so by, be kind, be helpful. If it's a newbie question, answer the newbie question every time. I don't care if you take that same answer, pop it in a notepad file that you just literally copy and paste. You're still responding. You're still showing that kindness. You're still showing that community effort, and people will absolutely appreciate that. So, right, don't be heavy-handed. Make sure everybody has a voice. Make sure there are no stupid questions, right? Make sure people feel that way, that I can literally ask anything I want. But at the same time, all this negativity that's going on in the world, you hear about Facebook and Twitter banning things that they don't like people to say. A community can't be that way, right? Say those things, but do it as a moderator. Make sure they're doing it in the appropriate way. Almost you have to develop your own, whatever community it is, almost have to develop your own morality, right? Your own moral aspect for that community. This is what we're going to do. Here's our guidelines. We're not going to, throw 4-letter words at everybody because you don't think they did a good job, right? that's where moderation comes in. It's ensuring that people kind of stay within the guide rails of that community, and really not deviate from it. But it's still, you can still give people a voice, right? But they can still follow the rules. If everybody knows what the rules are, then everybody can follow them.
Rod, we always call SMS for us was always seems much slower. You either install the SMS agent or you install something from SMS and you ask how to go, and the answer is always, oh, it seems much slower. And you never knew why, right? You always blame the last thing that changed without really having any data. And the SMS was always the thing that got blamed. Did you guys send something out last night? Because we're getting phone calls at the help desk. You just had that invisibility factor out at the desk.
Well, when everybody in the organization knows that you can touch their PC from anywhere in the world, that kind of freaks people out just a little bit.
Yeah. So what was it, do you think? And that kind of the Win2K SMS era, what is it about those technologies that drove so much passion in people? There were other technologies going on at the time, like we talked about, the World Wide Web, the internet. What was it, do you think, about Win2K and SMS that brought folks together? And what do you see as any parallels going on today that might be some similar things?
Yeah, it's very, very good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Because there is kind of a very good defined answer to that, really. Because when you think about what a management tool is, you have the ability to manage all your devices. But that's really not where the value is. The value is being able to do more with less. A lot of organizations, particularly when SMS came out, I mentioned earlier about, back then we had economy issues and people were paring down their IT teams, if you want to call it that. I remember the company that I worked for when SMS first came out, we had cutbacks because of the economy. Our team was down to like 3 people, right, to manage I think it was 350 people in this one office in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so we needed some way to be able to help these folks because, we were help desk people. And literally, these were auditors and tax people. And during tax season, oh my goodness, the calls that we would get. It would just, being on call all the time at that period of time, it was just, it was terrible. But finding something like SMS, being able to touch every endpoint in that office. Somebody says, I need the latest update to my tax software. Well, hold on. Click, click, click. It's going to be there in about 5-10 minutes, right? And they're updated. We don't have to do that. I could dial in from home. People don't hear that word anymore. I could dial in from home, after getting a pager. Remember, we didn't have cell phones. And I could send that piece of software from my house on a weekend because during tax season, those tax people were working 7 days a week, right? Corporate taxes and things like that. Fast forward to today and the product that I work with, Azure Sentinel, we have a lot of capability and efficiencies built into the product. We've been very mindful about developing them in that respect, primarily because of the gaps that we identified moving to the cloud ourselves, identified in the existing competitive products today. There's a lot of gaps. So the things that you see in Azure Sentinel was built for efficiency to enable smaller teams, right, to be able to do things efficiently and still be able to manage security within their environment. Because we are touching, once again, every device, every service and application that exists within an environment, whether it's on-prem, in the cloud, multi-cloud, or anywhere, we're still able to touch that stuff and still be able to expose. So again, it's an efficiency thing. They tie together very specifically. I mean, this has always been the case. When things get tough, when the economy gets a little sour, or maybe there's cutbacks in one area or another, organizations realize they still need to be able to manage those devices. It's easy to kind of manage these days, Endpoint Manager and Intune from the cloud or on-prem. It's kind of the best of breed solution even today, but you still need to also be able to manage security. If you got a team of 2, that makes it extremely difficult. So you need to be able to trust the tool, right? Need to be able to trust that the tool is going to do it. I worked with a customer about a year and a half ago with Azure Sentinel. It was the state of Bahamas. One person, right? One person that manages all of their organization's PCs, devices, application services, but also they needed to be able to secure those devices. So literally one person is using Azure Sentinel and Endpoint Manager to manage everything that they have in an organization. And that is hugely valuable to people to be able to do that. I'm not saying that to anybody listening here that it's okay to get rid of people, because I don't need a bunch of people to do this anymore. But at the same time, there is that capability. The more people you have, obviously, the better job you're going to be able to do to support the environment.
Yeah, and automation can be a great thing, right? Deploying something at 2 a.m. so it's available the next morning for somebody, deploying to 1,000 people overnight. But without, and kind of Nexink is in that same space of bringing more flexibility, bringing more visibility to IT to really understand what's going on. Those tools can be dangerous too if you don't know the impact of the employee. You know, if you're sitting at a desk with a box of floppies installing Office and something goes wrong, you've impacted one person. If you deploy it to 10,000 people overnight, you could potentially take down 10,000 people. So you've really got to have a full understanding of what's going out there, and just the maturity of both the technology and the maturity of the design of that technology has really come so far over the last couple of decades.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's about deploying based on what you know about your environment, whether it's the deployment of the service or it's the deployment of policies or the creation of policies. Automation, right? You don't want to automate to oblivion. You don't want to automate humans out of the equation, because just like you said, in my case these days, you know, we have automation built into our SIEM, right? Make it easy so something gets exposed as a potential threat. As an analyst, the first thing I'm going to do is lock that user account out, quarantine them from the rest of the environment so the rest of my environment's not impacted. I'm probably going to quarantine their device, whatever they're computing on. But at the same time, I want to be very careful about that. If I lock out my CEO's account because he's trying to download his PowerPoint presentation that he forgot to load up before he left the office, or maybe he forgot to ask his secretary to do it for him, that might stop a sale that's going to pay my salary. So you got to be extremely careful. I mean, there's all kinds of things, the environment, politics, all kinds of factors that have to go into. Unfortunately, IT folks still, even today, have to deal with politics and stuff like that. But that's part of the environment that you have to know.
So, Rod, let's wrap up with a final question. How important is the tech community in the new era of remote and hybrid work? Should enterprise IT shops be paying more attention to the collaboration communities that are outside their own four walls now more than ever?
I would absolutely believe so. It is difficult, particularly as we've talked about from an efficiency standpoint, enabling your teams to be able to do things, right? But at the same time, everybody kind of wants that work-life balance. I think with this remote work, I think with this pandemic, people have come to the conclusion that it is possible, right? But these organizations still need to be able to train and have knowledge transfer to their employees, because with this work-life balance comes this aspect where you believe that maybe my team is not as capable as they used to be because they're not doing this literally 10 hours a day now. So this is where this community comes in, whether it's blog sites, whether it's docs that are on the web now, whether it's things like, dare I say, Reddit or things like that, right? Wherever you find a good, solid community, these are absolutely important for that knowledge transfer. It's much easier today than it was, 30 years ago to get information literally on anything. I remember I used to work on my kids' cars, right? I didn't have YouTube to figure out how to do that. We had manuals. My dad, I used his knowledge transfer to me. I knew how to work on cars. My daughter, she's married, had my first grandkid here recently, which is absolutely amazing. She changes her own brakes on her car. And I thought, she's going to ask me questions, this and that. No, she went to YouTube, watched a couple YouTube videos and figured it out herself. There is so much capability that we have that is valuable to these teams these days. Don't prohibit your teams from going out and taking advantage of these communities. There's so much value and content out there these days. It's actually more difficult to determine which is actually good value and which is bad value, right? But at least it's there. So yeah, in respect to that, organizations should allow their teams to share the things that they have figured out on their own. If you start keeping things to yourself, these communities can't grow, right? As you start to share things, it's going to make other people feel more comfortable about sharing with you, whether it's directly with you or it's just with the world where you can actually go out and grab it. So yeah, these communities, particularly for remote work, is more important today than it ever was.
I couldn't agree more, Rod. That's sharing of information. You can't look at it as an intellectual property. It's look at it as community property, and we're all here to help each other move things along.
Yep.
And what a wonderful moment this is to put in a plug for NextThink's Dex Hub, which is the Dex Show mothership, where you can find a lot of professional community collaboration, learning, and great content like this fantastic conversation. So please do check that out. It's dex.nextthink.com, and there's no site quite like it in digital employee experience. Gentlemen, it's been fascinating listening to that conversation. Really, really enjoyed it. Rod, thank you so much for coming on the show. Hope you come and see us again next year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Right.
I love to reminisce. So
yeah, Rod, great to see you. Great to talk with you, and have fun at the MMS. I wish I was going this year, but hopefully we won't wait another 10 years to bump into each other.
Speaking of community, that's a lot of people that are at that event have come from that community from 30 years ago. So a lot of people still, oh my goodness, it's like we're all just inbred or something. We can't get rid of each other.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.